Hey y'all, I wanted to do a review of your Teach 2 lesson just so that you can hopefully refer back to this before you go into your classroom to teach. I did get some new supplies, so I got little tiny cocktail spoons. They're really cute. Let me see how many little beads. It scoops 2, 4, 6, 8, roughly 8 beads at a time, give or take. So to me, that will make this flow a lot smoother with your kids because they're not going to be scooping like a sample of 80. I feel like that was one of the issues we had in class, when you had those cups. It was large sample sizes. So anyways, I also got paper plates. These will fold so that they can dump them back in their bag easier. And because they're tapered, the beads shouldn't bounce as much as they did on those plastic plates. So anyways, I hope that's helpful. So this first slide, and I'm not going to tell like what specific phase of the 5E this is, but it should be kind of obvious. I would present this slide to my students. So I would maybe have this on the board projected as they're walking into class so they can read it. Okay. I had told y'all in class down here is all the information you need to know. I think it was Cameron had asked, can you add stuff to the slides? And that is completely fine if you want to customize this. So just as a reminder, you'll go to File, make a copy, entire presentation. You'll save it as whatever you want to save it as, and you'll save it like in your drive. I'm canceling because I don't want to make the copy, but you'll click make the copy. And so if you want to add this as a slide under that, you'll just hit plus and you'll add that information down there. But if not, like it wouldn't hurt to have this printed out or have it written out so that you can refer to it because basically you're just gauging their interest. You're piquing their interest, I think is the term that the You Teach people use. So it says Harry S. Truman, president-elect, holds up an edition of the Chicago Daily Tribune with the headline. I don't know why I didn't have all this in there anyways. Dewey defeats Truman. And so you're going to ask your kids, like we did in class, what does president-elect mean? And some of them may not know. You may have to tell them. She'll say, like, it means he was elected president. Harry Truman won. And it says, so, but the article says that Dewey defeats Truman. Well, that's not the case if Truman won. And so then you'll read this information. On November 3rd, 1948, the following headline ran, blah, 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 blah. Has anyone heard about this election? Pause. That is where you pause and give them a chance to respond. Like in your brain, maybe think count to 60 or something, because you got to let them think and like digest what you just asked them. It says the headline ran before the official election results were known. All this, you can read all this. And you can talk about like, why did this get published? Like, what do y'all think happened? And some of your kids are going to have like really good ideas and they may say bias or they may say, it was false information, whatever. Some kids are going to have nothing. And so you've got to work with what you're given depending on your class. And you'll talk about how the telephone was a relatively new invention, that it was typically only in homes that were wealthier people. So since they surveyed out of the phone book, addresses out of the phone book, it was only people who had telephones. And so it represented a subgroup of the population, a sample of the population, but it wasn't a random sample because it was like specific to those who had phones. So, anyways, you're getting them thinking. And so we're like, what makes a random survey? And you can read off that. And so you're like, today we're going to do an activity where we are going to see if we can use samples of a group of fish in a pond to determine information about the population. If you want, you could choose to add a slide between here that talks about like, okay, so let's talk about how this may be used in the world today. So like think about wildlife and game wardens. When they go out, let's say that there's an endangered population of deer and they're trying to figure out how many deer are in 1,000 square miles or square acres, whatever they do, however they measure that. And you would say, like, how would they do that? They can't catch all the deer. What are they going to put with them when they catch them? All this kind of stuff. And so you're just getting them thinking. You don't give them the answer immediately. You can revisit that at the end of class if you choose to, but it's just to get them thinking, like, well, how would they do that? So for this example, we're seeing how many fish are in a pond. Okay. Are trying to guesstimate, I guess. So it says we're going to explore one way to use a random sample to gain inferences about a population. You'll click here. This is that video I showed you. Depending on the level of your learners, you may choose to play this entire video first, then have them start the activity. I've done that before with 7th graders and it worked fine. If your learners are lower level, or if you like 6th graders and you think it's better to like play little chunks of it and then like have them do the activity as you go, that's fine. you're the teacher, you kind of have the right to choose as you want with that. So I'm not going to play the video. You can watch it yourself. But so you will also have these worksheets. This is what is printed. One of the things that's printed in your bag. You should have one for every kid. We discussed in class, I thought about only printing 15 because it would be one for every partner pair. But I really feel like that just opens up the door for one kid to do all the work and one kid to not do anything. So, you want both kids involved. And so it's going to say, take one sample of fish from your pond, record the number of fish in your sample. So first you need to talk about like the materials. Okay. So in your bag, you're going to have 15 little cocktail spoons that you give out. These are really cute. Kids are gonna like these. They're gonna try to take them home because kids, it's like the little sample when you go to the ice cream. I know how my kids are. They want this to eat with, even though it takes 7 hours. So please make sure these all come back home because I paid for these. So like I want these back. So you'll have 15 of these, one for each group of two. You'll have 15 of these, one for each group of two. You'll have a bag of black beads, maybe less than this because you only need enough to replace all of their samples. You're gonna have one paper for every kid. You're going to have one vocabulary graphic organizer for every kid. You may or may not get to that, but I put it in there just in case. And then you should have 15 individual bags of orange beads. So I also pared these down because in class, remember we talked about, we felt like there were way too many. And then you'll have 15 of these. I almost forgot these. So each group will get one bag of beads, one spoon, and one plate. Okay. And so that's what you get out. And so you're going to say, all right, so you need to put your, and I'm going to do like not the entire activity, but I'm going to kind of show you what it would look like. So you need to maybe model this for your kids. Say like open your brown paper bag. Okay. And you're going to pour your orange fish into the bag. And you're saying, this bag is our pond. Okay. If you want to give specific info about like putting the entire bag, the plastic bag down in the brown bag before you tip it over, you can, give specific info so they don't spill the beads everywhere. But so basically all your orange beads are in your bag. Okay. And so it says, take one sample of fish from your pond. So using our little cocktail spoon, we're going to do one good scoop and we're going to dump them on our plate. And so I got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I got 9. So they would record 9 right here. And like I said, I'm going to fill it in on here just so you can kind of see for the purpose of this instruction. I'll go back and delete it later. But anyway, so they put 9 there. It says, put your sample fish back in the bag. So I'm going to put a star here because I'm going to update that. At this point, this is when you go around and you replace their sample fish with the black fish. Remember we talked in class, like when I taught this in my class in 7th grade, I used goldfish, the little crackers, and they would just mark with them on a permanent marker, like with a permanent marker on both sides, and then we threw them away at the end of class. Y'all are serving way more kids than I served. We don't have, we do essentially have a budget now, but it's not sustainable to throw goldfish away every time we do this activity. So this is like in lieu of that. So we can't necessarily tag our orange beads. So we are going to trade out our orange beads for our black beads. These are going to be them after they're tagged. Okay. So I can throw an extra plastic bag in your bag, whatever you need to do, but you're going to put the sample fish. You're going to take their sample fish. Don't leave them with them because they'll find their way back into their pond. And you're going to replace them. So since they had 9 sample fish, I'm going to replace them with 9 black fish. Let me get one more. Okay. So now this is my sample and they're going to put these back in their pond. And so we can bend our plate. I'm trying to show y'all. And they put them back in the pond. And so now you should have orange fish and black fish in your little pond. Okay, because the black ones are tagged. So, and it says, place the new sample fish back in the pond. Okay, take 10 samples and record the data collected in the table below. You may want to break this down. You've been with your class at least 1 or 2 days, so you kind of know what you're dealing with. This is the number of tagged fish in each sample. This is the number of total fish. You'll also be referencing this video. Make sure you reiterate the need to shake their little bag. So they're redistributing their fish and then they'll take their sample. During this time, because they're doing this 10 times, make sure they are not looking in their bag trying to pick certain fish. Make sure they're not scooping and then like pouring some back in or whatever. Like it's supposed to be a complete random and buy a sample and they dump it on their little plate. And so it'll look like this. And so you can kind of see I got 8 fish that time. So this is going to be so much nicer than when y'all did it in class. So I had 1 blackfish because I had 1 tagged, and then I had 8 total. That's one thing my kids would mess up sometimes. Sometimes kids would put tagged and not tagged. You need to clarify that this is everybody, including the tag fish. And then they're going to do this 8 times or 10 times. I'm sorry. They're going to put them back in the bag. They're going to shake it up. I'm going to do one more, and then I'm going to zoom on down to the bottom. And they're going to write it down. So this one I got 1 tagged. And I got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 total. Okay, and so I'm going to make up the rest of these numbers because for the purpose of this video, I'm not doing all of these. So I'm making these up. Your kids are doing them on their own, and they're making the most noise they've ever made in their life. And your cooperating teacher is wondering what they've signed up for. Not really. Okay. So anyways, we get to here. So we're done, and all of our fish are back in our bag. And so they've completed the activity. I would allocate like maybe 15 to 20 minutes for this. If you go around the room and in 5 minutes they've done 5 samples, you can adjust your timing. I've given you plenty of things to fill up your time. So, don't ever have an activity and say in your brain, like, okay, I'm going to give them 20 minutes to do this. And then after 10, if they're done, you just wait around for 10 minutes. Like, you need to move on. So it says find the average number of tag fish in the sample. They should know how to do averages because the last time you were in there, y'all did averages, but it doesn't hurt to review. And so you're going to say, you're going to add up the number of tagged fish and divide by what? And so they would divide by the number of samples, which would be 10 here. So I'm going to say 1 plus 1 plus 2. Okay, I got 13 divided by 10. So my average number of tagged fish is 1.08. I would use decimals here. We won't use decimals in our final. Okay, then it says find the average number of total fish in each sample. So 8 plus 11, 7 plus 9 plus 10, 8, 8. 797 divided by 10. So the average number of total fish was 8.4. And so your teacher may want you, like you can ask them ahead of time, like, hey, do you want them to show work here? I'm literally just going through this so you see, but it wouldn't hurt to discuss like saying, here's the number. This is what I'm dividing by, just so that they showed in their work. Set up a proportion or ratio table to determine how many fish are in the pond. So on the video, she gives a really good example of this. Remember in class on the board, I talked about like you potentially setting it up for your kids, like and this is only if they need it. But if your kids are like really struggling or something, you could be like, up here, this is where, let's see, the information from number 1 goes. So that would be 9. This is where the information from number 4 goes, 1.08. This is where the information from number 5 goes, and this is what we're solving for. Depending on your level of learners, you may even need to show them how to solve the proportion. Okay, this may be the trickiest part for you. So I'm going to write that down so I can actually figure out my amount. So I have 9, 1.08, x, and 8.4. You would show them to do a little cross multiplying or whatever your, most of the time it's not going to be like a solid number you can multiply by. And I get x equals 70. So it says, after finding your estimate from up here, count the actual number of fish in the pond. And so then I would dump out my little fish and I would count. I'm actually kind of curious if I'm close, so let me pause and I'll come back to it. Wait, I wonder if there's a way. Here we go. I'll pause. Okay, I had 101. And now, like, I'm like, that's not even really close. But then I remember that I made up like 8 of these samples. So anyways, it just shows you that there are less in the bag. So that's good. And it'll say, name one other way that researchers might use this technique. This would be a time for open discussion. How can we determine if a group is a sample or population? And you'll just ask through these questions. To me, if you make it to here, that's great. If you are finished and there's 15 minutes left of class, you can move on to this activity. If you go back to the slides, there's other information here where you can review the vocabulary. You could have them write the vocab in each of these little boxes on the graphic organizer and then copy the definition off of here and have discussion on that. There's more information. I think this is the same one that was on the sheet back here. It's the same info. And then there's even an extension activity. I would not do this unless you have an insane amount of time because MAD is mean absolute deviation, and that's a whole other process to teach your kids. There's this example, and then I even have a quizzes that you could have them join. So anyways, That's the gist of the lesson. If you have any questions on anything, feel free to reach out. I'll post this video so you can review it. And I hope y'all are having a great week.